the difference between solitude and loneliness. Why, hello there. Thanks for joining us for Plain English lesson number 262. I'm Jeff. JR is the producer, and the complete lesson can be found online at plainenglish.com/262. Coming up today, we are living in unprecedented times, and for many people, that means unprecedented isolation from others. Today, we'll talk about the difference between being alone, which can be good, and being lonely, which is not. The expression is set in, a difficult one today, and on the video lesson, we'll be talking about how to say two things are true simultaneously, how to say two things are true at the same time. That's the video lesson at plainenglish.com/262. The global pandemic is causing people around the world to feel a wide variety of emotions, including stress, fear, sadness, worry, and anxiety. Many of these are emotions that we feel in one way or another throughout the course of our lives. But one of the emotions unique to this pandemic for a lot of people is loneliness. Many of us are living through a period of physical isolation that we've never known before. Loneliness is not the same as being physically isolated, not the same as being alone. It is possible to feel lonely even in a huge crowd. It's possible to feel lonely even while living with a large family under one roof. At the same time, it's possible to be alone a lot and not feel lonely at all. So let's talk about the difference between these two, the difference between feeling lonely and being alone. Solitude is the word that describes being alone. Going for a long run, reading a book uninterrupted, meditating, or doing yoga, these are ways to use solitude to your advantage. A lot of people are comfortable with solitude. Introverts like me, we like it. We derive energy from being alone. It helps clear our minds and gives us the energy we need to enjoy social situations in the future. For introverts, periods of solitude are like a special gift. It's not all we want, but it is necessary for us to be happy. This certainly helps during a situation like the current pandemic. Extroverts are different. For most extroverts, prolonged periods of isolation, periods of solitude, cause anxiety. Times like this take energy away from extroverts. They want to fill this time with contact. In many ways, solitude is a state of mind. There are times when I'm out in public surrounded by other people, but listening to noise-canceling headphones at the gym or on public transit. At a time like that, as an introvert, I can still get the benefits of solitude even while surrounded by people. An extrovert could spend a lot of time physically alone, but be happy by connecting with others through technology. In normal times, we can regulate the amount of solitude we get, the amount of time being alone, to align with our needs and to make ourselves happy. The problem comes when a person can't strike the right balance, and that's when loneliness sets in. Loneliness is about not getting the type or amount of social connections that you want to be getting. Some people will be happy with a lot of connection. Others will be happy with less. Introverts and extroverts can experience loneliness because loneliness is less about the amount of connection and more about not getting the level that you need to be happy. Different people experience loneliness differently. Some may feel sadness, some simple isolation. Others might feel anger, resentment, or jealousy toward others who are more sociable. Some might experience loneliness as a feeling of grief, the sense of sadness and loss you feel when a loved one has died. Others may feel despair, hopelessness. These are not good emotions. Scientists have studied the negative health consequences of being lonely, and they've found that it's as bad for your physical health as being obese. It may even be as bad as being a moderate smoker. Scientists have discovered physiological markers of loneliness, things in our bodies that correlate with feelings of isolation. Lonely people have low levels of a particular kind of blood cell that aids in fighting viruses, of all things. They also have more of another kind of cell that causes inflammation. Having identified two physiological markers of loneliness, a team of scientists sought to discover any types of behaviors that would lower these physiological markers and potentially make people feel less lonely. They directed a sample of people to purposely do simple acts of kindness toward others, such as running an errand for an elderly neighbor. They found that lonely participants who did these acts of kindness not only felt less lonely afterward, but also had lower indications of loneliness in their blood. What's more, they also found that doing random acts of online kindness, like donating to a GoFundMe campaign or writing a simple thank you email, had similar effects. We're getting really close to our new website. A week from today, it will come out. So now I thought I would tell you about the best feature of the new site, the one that I am most looking forward to, and that is the social feature. Speaking of connectedness in this lesson, there are two components, a free component and a component that is going to be part of our membership, Plain English Plus. Let's start with the free component. People have asked and asked and asked almost since the beginning of Plain English for a Facebook group. Now, I didn't love the idea at the beginning, but now I think we could really benefit from having a Facebook group just for Plain English listeners. So we will be opening one up, and we will share the details of that with you shortly. And that will be open to any Plain English listener on Facebook, and it will be free. There are two huge new benefits to Plain English Plus that I want to share with you as well. The first is our online forums, and these are private discussion groups on plainenglish.com where you will be able to practice your writing and get answers to your questions in English. Those are the two objectives. Now, a Facebook group is going to be more informal, more social, but in the Plain English forums, we'll be giving you the prompts to practice writing in a longer and more thoughtful way. And secondly, you'll have the chance to ask me anything in English, anything at all. Now, this could be asking for clarification about one of the video lessons, practicing an expression that you just learned, or asking me about something you saw elsewhere. And I'll answer it for you in the forums. So that's open to Plain English Plus members. And we've had a select few members in their testing, and I just love how it has gone so far. The second big benefit to Plain English Plus members will be the live video calls. 2 live video calls on Zoom will be included every month for Plus members. And those were really popular, and I'm happy to be able to include them in the Plus membership. So to recap, we will be creating a free Facebook group for any Plain English listener, and we will have online practice forums and live video calls for Plus members. All that starting on June 1st, 2020 at plainenglish.com. This is a tough one, I'm not going to lie. The expression today is set in. When something sets in, it begins and is likely to continue for a while. It's usually something difficult or unpleasant. The way I used it was somewhat complicated, so let's start with an easier example. One thing that is difficult is a long, cold winter. A lot of things are not possible in the cold weather, including work on your house. If you need to, say, replace your roof, then you want to do that before the cold weather sets in. Why do I say before the cold weather sets in? I could easily say before it gets cold, and that would be fine. But remember that when something sets in, it begins and is expected to continue. If you want to fix your roof, you should do it before it begins to get cold, because the cold will last for a long time and you won't be able to do your project until spring. So when we use set in, in this case, we are purposely saying before something difficult starts and is expected to continue. What else do you have to do before winter sets in? If you want to plant hardy vegetables like broccoli or Brussels sprouts, you need to plant them before winter sets in. These are veggies that you need to plant in the fall, but you have to do it before winter sets in because if you wait until December, well, the ground will be frozen. You won't be able to dig, and you'll have to wait until next year. Rain can set in if you're expecting it to rain for a while. If you live in the Caribbean, you're used to just a few minutes of rain at a time. In that case, you would not use set in because the rain doesn't last. But if the forecast calls for rain all day, you might want to go for your morning run before the rain sets in. So that's weather. Emotions can set in, and often emotions are hard to reverse. Loneliness is the example I used in the lesson. Some people start by either living alone or spending a lot of time alone, and that's fine. But the danger is that loneliness sets in. The danger is that you begin to feel lonely and that emotion continues for a long time because it's hard to reverse. So if you begin to feel isolated, it's important to make the connections you need before loneliness sets in. Frustration is another emotion that can set in. Here in the US, some state governments are finding that frustration with social distancing is beginning to set in. We can see that because people are starting to break the rules more and more. Frustration sets in. It begins, and it's not likely to go away anytime soon, at least not without relaxing the rules. Panic can set in, especially in the stock market. The stock market is a very emotional place. People follow their emotions. They follow the crowd in the stock market very often. And when there is a lot of bad news over and over, then panic can set in. People start selling stocks because they're worried about the future. Others do the same thing, then more people and more people. When panic starts, it lasts for a while. That's why central banks and national governments did so much to support the economy in the early days of this crisis. They didn't want panic to set in either in the stock market or in the main street economies. Here's a quote for today by the author Barbara Kingsolver. Hope is a renewable option. If you run out of it at the end of the day, you get to start over in the morning. Good words to keep in mind as we go through the economic and emotional trials of this pandemic. Hope is a renewable option. If you run out of it at the end of the day, you get to start over in the morning. That's all for today's lesson. I'm glad you were able to join us. We'll be back again on Thursday with another plain English lesson.